Welcome, history aficionados and students of poor tactical decisions, to the Pacific Theater. Prepare your mental flip-flops because we are about to embark on the most relentless, unpleasant, and bizarre island-hopping tour in warfare. The year is 1941, and Imperial Japan is hosting the world's most poorly planned resource grab road trip. What, you might ask, pushes a nation to wage war against the world's greatest industrial power? A country whose manufacturing capacity could churn out battleships faster than Japan could print propaganda posters. The answer, as always, is hilariously mundane. They were almost entirely out of gas. Think of it this way. Japan had an ambitious military machine, a sleek, finely tuned V-12 engine of conquest. But the fuel light had been blinking for months, and their invasion of China had been extremely thirsty. The solution was simple and insane. Stop the logistics problem by invading more places. This brings us to the moment Japan decided to park its logistical tanks on France's lawn. Now France, bless its heart, was busy. Germany had turned the mainland into a parking lot in just 46 days, so French Indochina was an easy target. Japan swooped in to cut off Chinese supplies. It was a stunning victory by proxy that felt suspiciously like stealing candy from a highly distracted baby. Buoyed by this success, Tokyo decided to show off its new tough friends to the world. They signed the Tripartite Pact, officially becoming best buddies with Germany and Italy. Historians generally agree this move was meant to intimidate the United States, not charm it. It was the strategic equivalent of walking up to a bully and saying, "My friends are even farther away. Don't mess with me."
Move those supplies to warehouse 4.
Spoilers, it did not intimidate the US at all. In fact, the US watched Japan start eyeing the Dutch East Indies with a very thirsty look. The aggression finally exceeded Uncle Sam's tolerance levels, and the hammer dropped. An oil embargo was imposed, along with a freeze on all Japanese assets abroad. This was not just a problem. This was a mathematical certainty of doom for the empire. The Imperial Japanese Navy realized their war machine would grind to a dusty halt in 2 years. They had enough fuel for a 2-year war, which meant 2 years to win the entire thing. At this juncture, Japan saw no other option. And we know what that means in military language. It means launch a massive, aggressive series of attacks that accelerate the timeline of defeat. The targets were obvious. Malaya and the Dutch East Indies, with all the vital oil and rubber. But one large star-spangled obstacle stood in the middle of the proposed supply lines. The Philippines, controlled by the United States. The dagger aimed at Japan's windpipe. If the resource grab provoked the US into war, the Philippines were a lethal threat. So the grand strategy emerged with a mix of genius and profound delusion. Occupy everything. Create a massive fortified defense perimeter and dare the Allies to break through. The plan was not to defeat America directly, but to exhaust it into negotiation. Japan hoped to be such a costly, painful nuisance that the US would simply go home. A bold assumption given America's habit of ignoring cost and doubling manufacturing output. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the US had its own plan, codenamed Plan Dog, Germany first. The US expected to lose the Philippines, Guam, and Wake Island temporarily while focusing on Hitler. They figured they would return to the Pacific later, after Europe was handled. This strategy perfectly matched Japan's belief in American rationality. If only the war waited. Enter Marshal Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, a man of ambition, skill, and grim foresight. He predicted that if Japan poked the American beast, they would wake a sleeping giant. Yamamoto became the architect of the ambitious, desperate sucker punch on Pearl Harbor. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, the air was thick with dive bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters. It was a stunning tactical feat. They destroyed aircraft, sank ships, and killed thousands of sailors. Eyewitness Donald Stratton, a survivor of the Arizona, later described the scene with grim simplicity. A fireball engulfed the whole foremast. Very few escaped. It was chaos and fire everywhere. Yamamoto had two hopes: to shatter American morale and neutralize the Navy's advantage fast. He did shatter morale for a few days, but Japan made a massive tactical blunder that morning. They attacked Pearl Harbor when 0 U.S. aircraft carriers were in port, none of them at anchor. It was the military equivalent of setting a trap for a mouse and catching only its tail. The fleet was crippled, but the carriers, the true heart of power projection, were safe at sea. Still, the attack bought Japan the vital time they needed to execute the great resource grab. It was time to go on a rampage across Asia and the Pacific Islands, without delay. The Malaya-Singapore campaign was a horrifying success for Japan, defeating Britain in 2 months. It became one of the worst defeats in British military history, shocking London completely. The Dutch East Indies fell even faster. The local loyalty was gone, and morale non-existent. Dutch rule was unpopular, so when the Japanese arrived, the locals simply waited for it to end. Japan captured the region and gained immediate access to glorious, vital oil fields at once. Victory. They finally had the gas to fuel the empire and the ambition to expand more. The Philippines, however, proved much stickier than they imagined, full of surprises. Just hours after Pearl Harbor, a Japanese raid caught half the U.S. Army bombers refueling. They were parked, wingtip to wingtip at Clark Field, and it became a turkey shoot disaster. By the end of December, Manila was occupied, and American defenses were collapsing fast. General Douglas MacArthur, commander of the local forces, ordered a last-ditch retreat. They fell back to the Bataan Peninsula, cut off, low on food, medicine, and ammunition. One historian wrote, MacArthur now commanded a besieged army short of every supply. These men, the battling bastards of Bataan, hung on grimly, despite hunger and disease. Their commander became America's most visible hero, but heroism does not stop bullets. By May 1942, 6 months after the invasion, the American Filipino forces were defeated. It was the largest surrender in American history. 80,000 men captured in misery. The atrocities that followed, the Bataan Death March and POW abuse, became infamous worldwide. Corporal Herschel Williams recalled the survivors as skeletons with skin drawn tightly over bone. As for MacArthur, he made a dramatic escape to Australia and vowed, "I shall return." A promise that, unlike Japan's fuel timeline, he actually kept and fulfilled later. But the quick days of victory were already peaking. Japan was running into exhaustion. They now had oil, but also a continent-sized defense perimeter, impossible to protect. America was no longer sleeping and was preparing its vast industry for total war. This brings us to the moment the Pacific War stopped being conquest and turned to survival. Japan tried to occupy Port Moresby, leading to the Battle of the Coral Sea in May 1942. Historians still argue about Coral Sea. Japan sank more ships, but the invasion was halted. It was a tactical win for Japan, a strategic win for the Allies, who stopped expansion. 2 of Japan's fleet carriers were damaged and missed the next huge engagement entirely. That next fight was the Battle of Midway, the turning point of the Pacific War. Midway shattered Japan's hopes of seizing Port Moresby and broke its naval backbone. 4 of their best aircraft carriers were sunk, a loss they would never recover from. It was the moment Japan stopped being the aggressor and started playing desperate defense. Midway flipped the script and opened the way for the Guadalcanal campaign. In August 1942, Guadalcanal was the true introduction to the geography of suffering and endless hardship. Forget fighting soldiers. American forces fought malaria, mud, and monsoon-soaked supply lines. The campaign lasted 6 months, ending in February 1943 with a costly Allied victory. The success cost more blood than bullets and taught both sides the price of the jungle. MacArthur in the south and Admiral Nimitz in the north adopted a new island-hopping plan. The concept was brutal but simple. Capture key islands one after another toward Japan.
Banzai!
The brutal part was guaranteed by the doctrine that demanded never surrender under any cost. This created a chain of battles that defined the term meat grinder across the Pacific. The first major example was Saipan in June 1944. Fierce fighting beyond imagination. When trapped, the Japanese commander declared, "There is no difference between troops and civilians." He urged everyone to attack with bamboo spears rather than be captured by the enemy. It ended in the largest Banzai charge of the war. 4,300 men attacking. 15 hours of suicidal assault. Not to win, but to inflict maximum pain before death. The garrison was annihilated, leaving hundreds of American casualties, but thousands dead. The message was clear. If one small island cost this much, what would Japan itself cost? Meanwhile, MacArthur waded ashore after Leyte Gulf, the largest naval battle ever fought. Japan lost so badly they never recovered, suffering 190,000 casualties. MacArthur declared, "People of the Philippines, I have returned." And he truly had. But the horror was only escalating. Each new island worse than the last one before. The second to last major battle was Iwo Jima in February 1945, lasting 1 bloody month. American forces actually lost more men than the Japanese, who lost their entire garrison. 17,000 defenders died on that volcanic rock turned into a furnace of ash. It ended with the iconic flag raising on Mount Suribachi, symbol of victory and pain. The final major island was Okinawa, starting April 1945. 3 months of hellish resistance.
Move that dozer!
The US needed this island for air bases to strike Japan directly across short distance. Its proximity guaranteed fanatic defense. 50,000 US casualties, and twice that Japanese. 100,000 of 110,000 defenders died. Most civilians perished too. Many civilians were ordered to commit suicide rather than surrender to the invaders. Okinawa became the ultimate psychological barrier, showing invasion was a terrible idea. U.S. strategists concluded Operation Downfall. A mainland invasion would be catastrophic. Suicide estimates warned American casualties could exceed 500,000, maybe even 1 million. Japan, by early 1945, was defeated, her navy sunk, and cities burning from firebomb raids. Tokyo burned in March 1945, killing thousands and leaving millions homeless and starving. Yet, they refused to surrender, clinging to hope the Americans would tire and withdraw. They believed the original plan might still work, that pain could force negotiation. While soldiers bled on islands, a secret project in New Mexico was nearing completion. Just before Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt approved research into military nuclear fission. It was called the Manhattan Project, a secret collaboration of scientists and engineers. While Marines crawled through mud, physicists built the weapon that would end the war. They proved that brute force could be replaced by simple, terrifying physics of energy. The war that began from oil shortage would end through a surplus of unimaginable power. On August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, destroying the city. When Japan still refused to surrender, a second bomb fell on Nagasaki on August 9th. That same day, Russia declared war and invaded Manchuria, sealing Japan's final fate. It was over. The clocks had run out, on oil and on human endurance completely. The surrender came 5 days later, ending the brutal, sprawling Pacific conflict forever. A desperate 2-year resource gamble ended in light and fire instead of occupation. The geography of suffering, the relentless island grind, all rendered moot by a flash. The war ended not with landing craft, but with a mushroom cloud over a port city. That is why the answer to how the Allies won is not a battle or a commander. It is simply science, the power that rewrote war and changed the world completely. But the story of the atomic age and its aftermath was only just beginning to unfold. A new world emerged from ashes, with reckoning, rebuilding, and strange new geopolitics ahead.